Hello and welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. Today I'm talking to you about the art on the Strip, and I'm looking at the incredible aesthetic influences of art on the Las Vegas Strip, including its many casinos. So I start here at the Encore, the Wynn, Las Vegas, and this is an amazing piece. This is Jeff Koons' Popeye. And this particular piece, if you know anything about it, was purchased by Steve Wynn for $25 million or so. And I just read an article that actually, I think it was last year, there was a rumor that someone offered him $60 million for the piece, and he turned them down. I don't know if this is true or not. The other amazing thing about this piece is it has a 24-hour guard, which you can see on the left there. And twice a year, Steve Wynn brings in two German experts who are expert in basically cleaning this metallic structure. They spend 2 days doing it, working all day long, and they're paid $15,000 a piece plus expenses. So I wanted to use this context of this incredible piece by Jeff Koons to begin this video journey today, because I think it says something about the stakes here on the Strip. When we talk about art, we're talking about some of the greatest art in the world. Perhaps you're familiar with Steve Wynn's previous property, the Bellagio, where there's a restaurant called Picasso, which has indeed numerous Picasso paintings. You also recall that the Bellagio has a gallery of fine art that has really good shows. And you might even recall that some time ago there was a Guggenheim Museum at the Venetian, although it didn't work out and it closed after its opening. So I think that's some of the context that you get when you think about the incredible aesthetics, the art that we see on the Strip. So in the video journey today, I'll take you through many of the Strip casinos. My concentration will be at City Center and the Cosmopolitan, and these are the casinos that tend to have the most art, although I'll try to cover as many others as well as possible. Okay, and since I mentioned the Encore and Wynn, certainly I should say that in addition to the Jeff Koons, there's a lot of design and aesthetic features. When you go outside, they have a pretty incredible water wall, and you can think about a lot of the design of casinos on the Strip. It's going to vary with casino, have tendencies towards something more aesthetic, and we're moving away from the following. These are ideas we might have about the Vegas Strip, the area, say, of Fremont Street, all the signs, all the glitter, all the neon, the sensibility of, sites like this, walkways of neon at Bally's. In other words, I'm suggesting is this aesthetic movement on the Strip might be a reaction against what we're seeing here. The glitziness of the Strip, the consumerism of it. If the Park MGM, the park area, is any indication, we may be moving away from this. Now, I'm not saying we're only going to be moving into this aesthetic realm that I'm talking about with City Center and Cosmopolitan, but we may be going against the old tradition of the past in which there was more of a focus on spectacle and thematic representation in terms of theme spaces. So it's something definitely to think about. Now, the first piece we're going to look at here is Nancy Rubens, and this is at the Vdara, where I had a chance to stay. And this is called Big Edge, and this is quite an interesting piece. It's composed of hundreds of boats, as you can see here. And City Center really is the venue on a Strip, I would say, that has such a tendency to focus on aesthetics. In fact, if you go to any of the check-in desks at the hotels, including the Aria, you can pick up this brochure. And this has the City Center Fine Art Collection. I've mentioned some other videos, but years ago at the Bellagio, there was a show called 12+7, Architects in City Center, and there were quite a few statements there saying that with the architecture and the art present at City Center, there was a movement away from the tendencies of the past. And that's why I showed you those stock videos, because I really do feel that part of the inspiration, or rather I should say the impetus behind this move towards art, is perhaps a reaction against what went on in the past. In a sense, it's a gamble, right? Because what if this doesn't work? What if people do want some of that tendency of the past? We'll have to see. This is also part of the brochure, so just like you do in a gallery, you have all the detailing of the various artists, the pieces, and so forth. And then next is a map. So this is the back of the brochure. So I thought I would take you through and show you as many of these as possible today on our tour of art at City Center. Okay, I thought we'd start with our tour of going back to Vdara. Actually, you find a lot of interesting art, whether in the room or in the lobby area. Here, for example, is Lucky Dream by Robert Rauschenberg. Just world-class art that you find. There's also a Frank Stella behind the check-in desk. I, for some reason, don't have an image that I could find of that. This is the old restaurant Silk Road. There's now a Starbucks and a meeting room there, but I always thought that Silk Road fit in quite nicely in terms of the design, very postmodern. Quite amazing, actually, in terms of the color choices. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, it was one of those restaurants that didn't last very long. I know their price points were somewhat high, but they had some food that I would say complemented the aesthetics of the restaurant, the design. Here's an example of it, this trio of eggs I tried one time. So no longer with us, but a sign of some uniqueness here at the Vdara. Okay, so we'll take a look at some of the art that we see throughout City Center, not really specific to the hotels necessarily. You see a model here of City Center. And, I think there's a design aesthetic here along with crystals that really fits in with what you see here. And so when we discover art like the next one, which is Rose 2 by Isa Jenskin, I think you have that sense that you're seeing something that fits in, right? It fits in with the sensibilities I think that we have in terms of the design, in terms of the offerings and the spaces and so forth. And just outside of City Center, we see the great piece here, the pop art piece by Clay Zoldenberg, Typewriter Eraser. This is a wonderful piece for, I think, this, location in City Center. It gives a real public presence to it, and it's iconic, and you can't miss it. And it also advertises some of the galleries that they have here that feature other artists. And you see just in front of the Mandarin Oriental, just a really nice site to see aesthetically here at City Center. Okay, and we can look inside crystals, and if you've seen my previous video features, you know that there's certainly a lot of emphasis here on both aesthetics, design, and of course architecture. The Daniel Libeskind design here. We also have the James Turrell piece, the light piece above. There's also in the Louis Vuitton store a rather secret space, another one of his pieces there. We can also marvel at some of the other design features inside crystals, say the David Rockwell trees here, among other features. What you discover in a space like this is really the art complements everything else, right? So it's not like you can just look at the aesthetics in a vacuum. The piece Glacia here, which is, I think, very well regarded by guests to crystals for its imagination, and also there's a tactile sense to it in terms of the temperature that you feel in terms of the ice, and so that's another thing that I think lends itself to curiosity as we look at a piece like this. And then of course we can also look at Halo, which is one of my favorites, which is I think a showstopper in terms of its design and the curiosity that it inspires in the guest who walks by this piece. Okay, so we're looking here at Tatsuo Miyajima's piece, Hoto, and I'm not familiar with this word, but apparently it connects to Buddhism and the context of change. So Miyajima's work all relates to the use of these LED counters, and I think you'll see some of these as we go up top. And it's either my camera or because I do have some video of these flickering, so if I find that, I will try to put that up there. But I did some color correction, so who knows, the end result might have been that you can't see, but these counters are all flickering at various rates and also different numbers. So it's a very cool feature here at the Aria. Okay, so we'll go down the escalator. There's a pretty trendy nightclub down here. Haven't been in a nightclub, but I always see all the amazingly dressed people lining up at night. On the right here, we have this great waterfall type feature. The design approach in the Aria is out of this world. I think it could be. I think the art certainly is amazing in the Cosmo, but the design of the spaces and the textures and the colors and the schemes, it's absolutely phenomenal. We're going to be seeing on the left here Jenny Holzer, her famous piece here, her text piece. I think it's great. This is near parking areas. We're getting an interesting flicker there, maybe because of the frame rate. I'm not sure what happened just there. This is called Vegas from 2009. This is one of these I think you could easily miss, right, if you weren't aware of this. And I like with both the Cosmopolitan and the Aria, there's this sense of creating spaces within the hotel, within the resort, the casino, that are almost hidden or to be discovered. You see that flicker again. I actually love it, whatever's going on there. Just a great piece, a really great piece. And then we'll go back up the escalator. I love that there's video art here, art that's besides, say, paintings that we see in a lot of casino spaces. It's just absolutely amazing to look at, and it's, I think, also really fitting in with kind of the hip lifestyle that's maybe anticipated with some of the guests here at the Aria and also at City Center. Now, about 4 years ago, I did a previous feature. This one's a little more detailed on art at the Aria and City Center, looking at Maya Lin's Silver River piece behind the check-in desk. It's still a classic today. It's still there. The lobby looks different. The lobby is one of those things that is constantly changing, almost in par with, say, the conservatory at the Bellagio. So it's fun to update this because you discover new pieces. You discover that things are always changing, and I've suggested before with my feature say on the Design Hotel that it's really significant actually to change up the offerings for the guest. The other thing you see at the Aria, I think, is an emphasis on aesthetics, say in some of the restaurants. If you go to Jean Philippe's pastry shop, there's also one in the Bellagio. The display there is constantly changing as well. And I was on the second floor. I was looking here at Gormley's piece back in this tour 4 years ago. I love how they have the plaques, describing everything here. I think zoom up to it in a second, perhaps. Okay, I guess I'm not in this case. Maybe I am. Yes. Okay. Looking up, there it is. Okay, great. And get a shot of that as well. And on the way over from the Monte Carlo, I discovered this, the second floor at the Aria, and this is the Seven Mountains, which is a pretty famous piece in 2017. Not on the Vegas Strip, but I think 20 or 25 miles outside. So it's another indication, I think, of an interest in aesthetics that they tried to pass on to the guest, an appreciation. And as you look at the design spaces of the Aria, again, I would say along with the Cosmopolitan, really fits in with what they're doing. I don't think this kind of design obviously would fit in with some of the themed casinos on the Strip, nor would the aesthetic focus of the sorts here and at the Cosmopolitan at City Center, nor would those fit in with the themed casinos that we're familiar with. Now, moving on then to the Cosmopolitan, this is one of a few, I would call them steampunk works of art. If you wander around upstairs by the buffet and some of the conference areas, you discover really amazing art pieces that you probably miss if you just go to the casino or some of the restaurants. And that's one of the joys of going to some of the newer casinos. They have these mysterious spaces that are interspersed for the guest to discover him or herself. Now, the video screens, I've often said, when you check in to the Cosmopolitan, are some of the best visual designs I've seen anywhere in a hotel, or for that matter, any sort of space. So it's another indication of how seriously they take aesthetics here as at the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. Now, looking at the Cosmopolitan, actually my voiceover was really noisy, so I'm going to redo it here. I was pointing out the fact that they have the Artemat here. And, the Artemat, I think, is something you don't see in a lot of hotels or a lot of spaces, and you could see the different choices here. So obviously, playing to an artsy clientele. Pay the $5 and you get a cool piece of art. And I've gotten a few pieces of art out of the Artomat, and it's pretty cool, I have to say. Some of the design of the stores, the restaurants, when you just look at all of this again in a holistic sense, Momofuku and the milk bar next to it, David Chang's masterpiece of Korean cooking from New York. You know, there's a lifestyle focus here, right? So all the pieces connect together. If you're doing something aesthetically focused, presumably the guest who's visiting the space is going to appreciate that. If they don't, quite obviously you wouldn't want to have that as your focus for the space. I think the Cosmopolitan really does stand out on the Strip as the one hotel, this is just my opinion, that's the hippest. It just has the hippest and coolest vibe to it. It absolutely does. You know, it doesn't have a huge gaming space below. The rooms are really nice. I've stayed in a room, but I actually love how they did the restaurants and the shops on the multi-level floors. You see some of the Jose Andres, some of his restaurants, including Chino Poblano. And again, if you want to attract guests, in addition to the art, you have to have amazing food to go with it. Now, I was sneaking back here to look at, of all places, Secret Pizza. Secret Pizza to me is another space that has, interestingly enough, an aesthetic focus. It's hidden. It's not on the official map. I mean, it has a Yelp page on Yelp, of course. But you go back, you look at all the record album covers, and then you look at the space here, and there it is. And it's always usually pretty busy. So we head back out through Secret Pizza. Great pizza, by the way. If you haven't tried it, I think it's maybe the best pizza I've had. It's one of the best on the Strip, so in my humble opinion. This area outside here used to have, I believe, I think it was carpeted and like games and stuff, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. That could be a floor up, but that was my recollection from before. Again, I think when you look at the design of the space, it lends itself to the lifestyle interests of guests, maybe who are also interested in some of the really amazing art that you spot while you're walking through the Cosmopolitan. Kind of like the Aria, the Cosmopolitan, if you go past Blue Ribbon, you see some of the other spaces. Right here, I think I'm pointing out the remainder of the Harmon. It's quite a bit of a disaster for the Strip. If you know the story about the Harmon, I've done a short video on it. You know, it wasn't correctly built, lawsuits to boot and everything, and as a result they had to take it down piece by piece. They didn't implode it. They took it down because it wasn't deemed to be survivable, I guess, if there was an earthquake. Designed by Sir Norman Foster, the world great architect. So just I think a sad story, to say the least. You know, and we'll have to see what happens with that space in the future. Somewhere along here you can make out the I thought it's on this side, the Rose, or maybe it's called Rose 2. So I'm taking you back in this space because I thought these are some of the cooler art pieces that you might miss. Very tastefully done. And we'll just walk through here. These are a lot of the meeting rooms. And I think in a bit, I'm going to raise the volume back up because I think what happened was when I was walking in this space, because you didn't have as much ambient noise from all the people and the sound and stuff, it was a little easier to hear, so we'll try to do that. So everywhere you look in this space, there's some aesthetic focus. Again, it's the Cosmopolitan's, I think, approach to the lifestyle concerns of the guest. Okay, sorry, actually, because of just some of the music playing that will get zapped by YouTube with their algorithms, I can't show you or let you, I'd rather listen to my voiceover, so I'll just talk you through what we're seeing here. So I think one of the things that is exciting as we look at some additional artwork here at the Cosmopolitan is the fact that they figured out that people do want to experience art. I think sometimes in our everyday lives, whether we're walking through shopping malls or we go to the gym or a store in our neighborhood or wherever, we sometimes encounter, you know, very generic decor. And I often think that what happens is people maybe decorate their home spaces, or if they own a business or a restaurant, with whatever typical decor you might find at a big box store or your favorite world craft, folklore, folkway type of store. And I think, you know, in spaces like the Cosmopolitan, there's a realization that we do need art and that enriches our lives. Particularly, I think, when we live here in the era of 2017, where Federal administration is attacking the arts, and there's always been an attack on the arts in the United States. So it's important to find the arts where we can find them. If you go to medical centers like Renown Medical Center in Reno, they have had a huge commission of amazing art, very talented artists that they've put up in their patient spaces or waiting rooms or lab draw rooms, and it makes a huge difference when you go there, particularly if you're dealing with really life-threatening stuff and so forth. Now look at the carpet here. Even the carpet is beyond the traditional, say, casino carpet, which is busy but almost forces you, because of its fluorescent, harsh patterns, to look up and maybe go find a slot machine or a bar to spend your money at. So it's amazing to see even this focus here. Here's a little steampunk genre. There's quite a few steampunk type of arts in the upper floors here at the Cosmo, and then we have some more video art, which, as we saw at the Aria with Holzer's piece, I think it's always welcome to see, because sometimes we focus too much on a static visual art of the form of paintings and sculpture. So it's exciting to see this here at the Cosmopolitan as we continue our tour here on aesthetics on the Strip. Now, certainly there are many other contexts of aesthetics on the Strip to consider. I can't cover everything. For example, you have this focus on the past, statuary, relics, recreations. You see this at Caesar's Palace, certainly throughout the Forum shops. You see it in so many examples, really, in terms of the columns, in terms of the statuary, in terms of the domes, so many features here. Even the ATM machine, right, has some of this treatment. And I guess what I'd say is this approach to art and aesthetics is a sense of focus on a perceived past, on a sense of heritage, statues here outside, like Bacchus and so forth. And so that's one presentation of art in other casinos. We could go to the SLS, which has certainly a design focus. There is art there, I think not in number and scale and magnitude as, say, what we find at the Cosmopolitan or at the Aria, but there was an attempt, I think, to create a hotel that has this sensibility. I think the location of the SLS maybe is a challenge in terms of popularity. Now, of course, the new park and the Park MGM, the transformation of the Monte Carlo, features what appears to be a lot of art, including here, Bliss Dancer, amazing piece from Burning Man, actually, that was transplanted here and altered in some senses. It looks amazing at night and also during the day. So I think it's a indication of some of the art to come. We'll have to see what continues to happen here at the park, MGM, and many other spaces in Las Vegas. So please come back for additional video features of the Immersive World's Handbook.